listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, Tom Edwards and James Jones. And I've only just stopped feeling sick after the last 15 minutes of that phenomenal win over Tottenham on Sunday. But to a man, what a performance. And if that Billy Bonds imagery of that heroic Czech son of a gun with blood pouring down his face didn't move you, then nothing ever will. Tomas Soucek and Vladimir Coufal played like warriors, both got some big knocks, but got up and ploughed on. Jesse Lingard's goals, a thing of beauty, and the band's celebration afterwards hit the right note for me. There is nothing like beating Tottenham and to go forth with the victory too. Well, James, how are you? Champions League dead certs, aren't we?
I'm absolutely buzzing still, if I'm honest, mate. Yeah, definitely been playing the Champions League theme tune over and over again in anticipation of next year, and then obviously coupled with Boris's announcement that fans will be back potentially by the last game of the season, so we might have a bit of a celebration there. But if not, there's real hope that we could be back in stadiums to see us walk out to that wonderful music next season. So yeah, absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Brilliant. Yeah, that's did lift the nation somewhat, didn't it? As if beating Tottenham wasn't enough. The fact we might actually be able to go and watch our team again, although that could be the bit that brings it all crashing down, couldn't it?
It needs to be nailed on before that game, just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. We have to beat Southampton at home in the last game of the season. 5 minutes in, Tomas Soucek puts the bar slightly over hit and out for a goal kick, and there's 60,000 people on his back slagging him off, saying, "Oh, you're rubbish! What a waste of money! Get out of our club! Confidence is destroyed." And then we go and lose 3-1 to Southampton. But Tom, it's very, very good stuff. There's brilliant chat with Tony Cottee coming up later in the show. Man, he scored against Tottenham on his debut, but to go forth as well as beating Tottenham, sometimes beating Spurs, Tom, can just feel like the highlight of a season, can't it? The only good thing to happen in an otherwise drab mid-table or relegation threatened season. But I don't know, it felt a bit, there's just something so much better about it, knowing that, yeah, we've beaten Tottenham, which is brilliant because we love beating Tottenham. But as well, the fact that we actually moved us into a Champions League spot when we're level on games with all those teams around us, just gave it that extra edge for me. Same feelings for you?
Yeah, exactly, mate. I remember, we've had some brilliant wins against them, the ones in the League Cup and all them, but ultimately they've amounted for nothing for us. And yeah, it's curtailed their season a bit and derailed a few of their title bids. But we haven't ever had that moment where it's something on the line for us apart from the rivalry for a long time now. And to play that game, to go 9 points clear of them, I think it is, and to be the team pushing for Champions League when they were talked about as title contenders 10 games in, saw the graphic from that, we weren't even in the top half. And now look at it. And Mourinho coming out beforehand and saying that, look, come the end of the season, West Ham will be in their rightful place and will be above them. They don't have to play a certain amount of games, X, Y, Z. And I think all we did is show up and prove that it's a proper football team we now got there. And David Moyes and all of them are believing that we can go toe-to-toe and we will. So to come out, not only beat the rivals, not only beat Mourinho, but to go in the Champions League spot and capitalise on the teams around us dropping points, showed a proper mentality and one to get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. There's every chance that could be the peak of West Ham sort of footballing memories. That is probably, but it really is, isn't it? Since we've been at the London Stadium or whatever, it's the very peak of we've never been in such a good position after so many games in a season since we've been at the London Stadium. So it's fair to say that this is, or that at the weekend when the final whistle blew, is our best moment for 5 years or whatever. So it's thrilling stuff. Just quickly, lads, before we move on, do the housekeeping, let everyone know what's coming up on the show. I just want to get your thoughts, just a bit of a quick fire one. Jonesy, we'll go to you first. What was better feeling, that one on Sunday or after earlier in the season when Lanzini pings it in the top corner to grab a 3-3 draw at the Tottenham Stadium?
It's a tough one. I'm still going to stick with Lanzini. I know, obviously, winning at the weekend meant we went fourth, and it basically just ruined Spurs' even sort of very faint hopes of getting back in it. But having been 3-0 down with 8 minutes to go, and then to equalise with a goal like that in their own backyard, when they thought they had the game wrapped up, 8 minutes earlier. Nothing beats that. Nothing.
Yeah. I'm sort of inclined to agree. Those moments, I think we said it on the podcast afterwards, those moments are what football is about. And it's the same feelings for you, or do you think that the actually getting a win and going into the Champions League trumps that?
I have to go Lanzini as well, just because I think it will stand the test of time. No matter what we do this season, maybe we'll look back in it in a few months and say that Spurs win was absolutely massive. But no matter what happens this season, that moment will be something we talk about for 30, 40 years. That high was one of the most euphoric moments in a long time as a West Ham fan. So I have to give it to Manu.
Yeah, absolutely. That will stand out, won't it? Well, look, bit of housekeeping before we crack on with the show properly. It's going to be another buoyant one from me and the lads tonight. We're getting a bit used to these now, James, aren't we? But yeah, follow us on Twitter at @WeAreWest Ham. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. The link to our channel is in the podcast description below. So click on the podcast you're on, whatever platform, just scroll down to the description, you'll find the link to our YouTube channel. We'll have an extended video version of our interview with Tony Cottee, which is on tonight's podcast, so don't worry about that. But if you want to watch that in full, the extended version will be going up on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram as well. We have got Instagram as well, and of course do give us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Subscribe to pod if you don't already. If you're a new listener, make sure you hit subscribe, leave us a review, 5 stars, some nice words. Yeah, what's coming up on the show, James? It's absolutely packed one tonight. We'll have some Spurs reaction. Alex Milner, opposition view last week from the Daily Mirror, was exactly right with his prediction about a scrappy 2-1 win. It was a fantastic start. Both the Czechs were brilliant. I spent the last 15 minutes with my knees clasped up to my chest, and I let out a weird little screamy yelp thing when Coufal hit it into Son's shins and it hit the post. We had a nice little FaceTime after the game, didn't we, sharing in each other's joy? So we'll talk about all that. Then, of course, as I mentioned, me and Tom were lucky enough to chat to Tony Cottee after that Spurs game, so we have the full extended interview with him. He's got a Q&A, with a virtual Q&A with Frank McAvenny on Friday night, that he's talking about that as well. And fans and listeners of the We Are West Ham podcast can buy tickets to that if they want to, with proceeds going to the Bobby Moore Fund. So that's great stuff from Tony. Part 3, we'll have the Betway charity bets. Tom, you were so close to winning yours against Tottenham, but no cigar for any of us. Me and James were a little bit further out. We'll have our Man City bets, of course. The opposition view with Steve Tudor is returning to talk about West Ham's trip to the Etihad Stadium Saturday lunchtime. Huge game that is, and whether or not we'll find out from Steve whether he expects us to get our usual hiding as we do against an informed City. I am quizmaster for Name That Game this week. Belter of a game coming up, and we'll wrap up with the West Ham women's segment. Just a brief one this week, because no game since that defeat to Brighton, but there is Chelsea at home on Sunday, which looks a little bit ominous for the girls as well. Then, of course, we'll say goodbye, get some final thoughts from the lads, a brief fantasy Premier League update, and we will say goodbye for another week. So loads to fit in, boys. But James, I've developed this habit recently. There's absolutely loads to speak about from Tottenham, but I'm just going to throw to you first, and you pick the first thing that you want to talk about that wonderful, wonderful Tottenham game.
You briefly touched on it, mate. I think Tom may have touched on it as well. The mentality throughout. We knew Tottenham were going to control large parts of that game. I feel like we say it every week, but West Ham of old would have crumbled and lost that 4-2, 5-2 probably. We've done it in the past. Or they would have nicked a last-minute equaliser. They wouldn't have, that ricochet off Son would have ended up going in the back of the net, or Bale's effort would have hit the underside of the bar and gone in like Lanzini's did at their place. And just the mentality to go 1-0 up after 5 minutes, then to get that second goal at the beginning of the second half, and then just to stay resilient and defend, and still cause them problems, particularly in the first half. It caused them, it wasn't just that one effort. We did have our opportunities, and if there was a game that purely summed up how far we've come under David Moyes and what David Moyes has done to the players' mentality. I think it's that. I keep thinking about it and just think that what we saw at the weekend, it isn't the West Ham we used to. It's the West Ham we used to this season, because it has been, pretty consistent. But we're so used to West Ham losing those games, even at 2-0 up. We've never been safe at 2-0 up. So yeah, for me that's the big one, and I think Lingard has had a big role to play with that since he's come in January, because he's brought in that, that experience he's had at a club he's won trophies at, a club that's built on winning, a winning mentality. I'm not going to say big team mentality, but a winning mentality.
It is, though. Thanks, Manuel. Thanks, Manuel.
a winning mentality. And I think bringing in someone, I know we questioned Jesse Lingard, but he's come in and he's almost solidified that. He's helped grow that even further in the dressing room. And you can see, like, he tweeted the other day saying it was like family already. And he's only been in the club for, a month? Not even that. So, and that just shows just everything seems to be going right. Everything went right, apart from conceding the corner from the near post for the smallest player on the pitch with a header.
Smallest man ever.
Yeah. Other than that, everything went right. Everything's going right, and it's just all so wonderful. And I haven't stopped giggling since.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? So after the game, me and James were texting each other, and Tommy, you were surprisingly quiet. I think I saw a couple of tweets. I was expecting a little 10-pint barrage. Yeah, that was it. So me and James were texting each other. Tom was nowhere to be seen, so I gave James a little FaceTime. He was out on his balcony up there in Boreham Wood, and we're just chatting, and all we did for the first 30 seconds of the call was just giggle at each other. Don't think we said any words, did we?
No.
just could not believe it. It was wonderful stuff. James, you mentioned it there. You said when your luck's in, or the things just went for us, and I think that what you can see at the moment, obviously the feel good factor is great, the confidence is good, but just one of those things that's immeasurable in football, that if you could bottle and sell would be worth absolutely millions and millions of pounds, is that it is just when your luck's in, like West Ham's is at the moment, it's really in. And when it isn't, like Tottenham's, it really isn't. I mean, that one with the post at the end, as it was like looping over the keeper, I just had, that knot of like permanent like frustration with West Ham that even now it just doesn't properly go away. Like, even though you're just waiting for it to come back. And that, as it was looping over the keeper, it was all in slow motion. And I'd already said, fuck's sake, exactly the sort of thing. I hate West Ham, so frustrating. Oh my God, why do I do it? It was already halfway out my mouth as it was looping over. I was just like, so unfair, so unlucky. And then seeing it hit the post, we've had a few of them this season, haven't we? Where, and like you said, James, broken record stuff. You think, well, that doesn't happen normally. We don't normally do that. And when Bale hits the bar and Declan Rice gets that blocking when, like, it was a dead cert goal, wasn't it? Any other time, it's just like
it's even that build up to when Bale hit the bar, when Kane found himself clear. And he had Son and Dele Alli in midfield. It was three of them running at Fabianski. Any other time, Kane plays that ball earlier than he does, and Son or Ali gets a tap in, but he delays it for whatever reason, allows Declan Rice to get in and make the block. And that was another bit of luck, because Harry Kane, world-class striker, makes that pass 9 times out of 10 at exactly the right time in order to get the assist. For some reason he didn't do it, and again that was our luck. And then obviously straight after that, Bale hits the bar. Just everything went for us, apart from Lukasz Moura scoring the only header he'll ever score in his life.
4 foot Moura rising from the abyss. Tom, you talk to me. What were your main sort of takeaways from it afterwards? Are there any bits that stuck out in your mind, or that you feel like you want to get off your chest and talk about tonight? Because this is the forum.
There's 2 things. I'll start. Jonesy sort of mentioned it then, and what Lingard's brought to us, and I personally want to talk about. I think he's got that unique ability to make everyone around him better. He got the confidence to get on it in tight spaces. He's good enough to wriggle out of them dribble. He's a ball carrier. He's quick. He presses from the front better than anyone we've seen for a while. We thought Bowen was good at it. The amount of ground that boy covers like in sprints is pretty crazy, and he sets the tone up there. And I think he just feels free. We saw at the World Cup, he was one of the main reasons we did so much damage to teams on the break and everything because of his running and his intelligence off the ball. And he had lost that, but he's come here and he's found his feet. And I think we've got a seriously good player. Like, he's making a lot of difference. I think the 3 or 4 games he's been here have been 3 or 4 of our best performances going forward and the most dangerous we've looked, even the Sheffield United one. So I think getting him in and actually getting this out of him is a story that I think most Premier League fans are quite enjoying because he's a likeable guy and he deserves this run of form. So that's one. That's my first one. And the second one is you again mentioned it, is the Soucek and Coufal thing. When Coufal gets that knock and Soucek sprints in and gives him checks on him and everything, all that. Like, I just love him. I just absolutely love that bloke. And that's the other one, mate.
Yeah, that was funny, wasn't it, when he's sprinting over, like, and then you can hear, I think West Ham released the video today with like the audio from the pitch audio ramped up. Yeah, you can just hear, I think it's Cresswell going, Tom, he's all right. No, he's Scouse, isn't he? That was terrible. He's all right, Tom. He's all right. Apparently, I can't do Scouse accents. I don't know if anyone else wants to have a go. But yeah, you can just hear Cresswell saying, "Tom, he's all right. Calm down. Like, what are you doing?" It's just
that was a better Scouse attempt than the previous one.
I know, that was a shambles, wasn't it? Yeah, all right, mate. No, yeah, I could do Scouse. I think just sounds nothing like Aaron Cresswell. I'll work on that afterwards. I'll be improved for next week, I promise. But Lingard, honestly, I just can't believe how good he's been. I mean, absolutely fair play. I remember saying in the podcast before his first game, we weren't particularly damning about him.
I was positive.
Yeah, all right. But I think it's just because he's a 5'8" attacking midfield player who likes a few step overs like Ben Rama. That is very much your type, isn't it?
Yeah, get him in the bag, mate. That's it. If they can do a step over and they've got half a long foot.
Yeah, exactly. They're a Tom Edwards type of player. But I remember saying before, and I was like, you've signed Lingard, whoopee. I think it's proof that David Moyes knows more than most football fans, including about what's right for the team and what isn't, and what players are going to be good and what aren't. But I do think as well, it's not for any fans who doubted it before. All these people coming out now going, if you doubted Lingard, you're a clown or whatever. I think it's totally understandable to have doubted him before, isn't it? And I'm not just saying that because I doubted it slightly, but he hadn't got a sniff at Man United for God knows how long. I know Fernandes is good. There was nothing suggesting that he had this sort of form in his locker. I thought it was at least going to take him a few weeks to get back up with the pace of it. But he's easily one of our sort of best players. A Fulham game, he was quiet, but everyone was a bit off. But James, what do you put that down to? Because, really, for someone to hit the ground running so well, it is quite surprising, wouldn't you say?
I don't know. I mean, I'm like you. I was expecting him to make some kind of impact eventually. I think we were all surprised when he just walked straight into the starting 11, given the options we already had, like Lanzini and stuff like that. But I suppose I'm not surprised that he's having now gone straight into the starting 11, that he kind of took his opportunity. He's clearly trying to play for a place in the England squad in the summer. I know Sky Sports were pretty much writing him off without opportunity in the build up to the game at the weekend when they were asked. They just went, nah, no chance. He's 28. He's got no chance. But he's clearly thinks he's got an opportunity. He's definitely playing like that, and that will be in the back of his mind. And he wants to prove to Man United that he's still got it, because he's a Manchester boy. And, it probably hurts him, the fact that he's had to go out on loan to try and prove himself away from his boyhood club. So he's got a lot to prove, both at club and international level. So I'm not surprised that he's playing with the freedom that he has, but I'm surprised at how quick he's done it, given that, we all expected him to be a bench player for at least the first 2 or 3 games.
Tom didn't, apparently.
I did. I think if you remember correctly and see the tweets, I said he'd be a properly good addition. I think he would eventually get in the side. I didn't think he'd start that first game, and I didn't expect him to score 3 and 4, but he's a good player and he always has been.
Do you write in all capitals with about 50 exclamation marks in it. If so, then I think I might have seen it.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a sticky caps lock, mate. That's the issue.
Exactly. Well, lads, that's enough of this unformatted stuff. Some of the talking points I sort of took away from it, Jonesy, again, we've touched on the checks there, that they were brilliant. But our goals, obviously, they come at just the right time, didn't they? Antonio, such a great start. Tom, I think it was you said it last week. We need to get up and at them quickly and play on that lack of confidence they had. But scoring when we did was brilliant. And then straight away, again, after half time, you think, that is exactly what we wanted. And then, I think, if I'm speaking completely frankly, I think a draw would have been a fair result. Tottenham were easily the best team in the second half. But as a few people have made, Tom, is that, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, we were in a position where we could sit back and try and soak up some of that pressure, weren't we?
Yeah, exactly that. We got ourselves in that position by putting a real good 60-minute shift in, and we sort of lost a bit in the tank. You could tell last 30 minutes, a few of them were blowing on fumes. Majority of them have played a stupid amount of football recently. It's been that starting 11 throughout the majority of the season. Rice saying Soucek ran 17 kilometers against United, and then he's still got the legs to play week in, week out after. It's just mind-boggling. So they were naturally going to drop deeper. They put Bayer on. I don't know how he's not been playing more minutes for them, because he did look pretty sharp and he pretty much changed the game in their favour when he came on. But we got
Tottenham fans are saying that's his best performance
really
for them since he's returned, isn't it?
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, because he did look dangerous. But yeah, we dropped deep, but the back four yet again stood up to a man. They were superb. The amount of crosses they stopped. A team like Tottenham's going to get a few chances, and we did ride our luck, but we have done a few times this season, and maybe that's the difference between other teams we've had in the past, which were nearly teams.
Yeah, I mean, them hitting the post and the bar like they did, you just think, oh, Jesus. Yeah. The bar one, they really should have scored there, shouldn't they? Oh, the fantastic block from Declan Rice, but from that position before that, you should go back. It was a bit unlucky. Good technique there to keep that spinning ball down. But if a goal had come for that, you think fair enough. But Jonesy, I think if you had to pick a negative from it, I'd have said Cresswell. He didn't have his best game. He seemed a little bit sloppy on the ball. And most of Spurs' dangerous attacks in the second half particularly seemed to come down his flank. I know Spurs changed it up slightly where they had quite a lot of success with players dropping in that line between our defence and Soucek and Rice. But yeah, did not one of Cresswell's finest games, but again, nothing terrible. Did you find the same or completely disagree?
I mean, it wasn't his best game in a West Ham shirt. It wasn't his best game this season, but I don't think he was particularly poor. A lot of the play, when a lot of the play,
5 out of 10, I reckon.
Oh, I think that's a little bit harsh, mate. At least go 6.
I'm just annoyed because I can't impersonate him.
Yeah, when he's involved defensively as much as he was at the weekend, obviously his performance is going to be highlighted more than anyone else. He's not going to stop every single player from running past and dribbling past him. He's going to, and particularly when he's up against the likes of Bale, Reguilon, and was it Doherty came on, and he even had Son at some point as well, who's drifting. So he was never going to be a 10 out of 10 performance, given that he had all those world class players running at him after the afternoon. But I don't think it was his worst performance, and he's been fantastic this year. So you can forgive him for having a 5, 6, or 6.5 out of 10 performance every now and then, given how good he's been.
6.5. Don't know about that. No, but I'm not being harsh. I don't want to get a load of tweets again like I did after Ben Rama the other week saying how harsh I was being. I just think if you had to pick a negative point, I just found a couple of times I was getting a bit frustrated with him, even on the ball as well. It was a bit sloppy. But Tom, did you agree with that statement? A few people have said it about a draw probably being a fair result. Obviously, it's brilliant to win, and I was loving it as much as anyone. I do think that would have been fair. Harry Kane had a few opportunities, didn't he? I thought Fabianski had an excellent game, by the way. He sort of gets overlooked a lot this season, but he's been wonderful. I thought he was great again. Harry Kane, I think a couple of them chances didn't have his shooting boots on, did he? I think he put one wide. close to half time, and then a couple would have just sort of gone through people's legs. Those usual shots he gets out of his feet that normally nestle in a bottom corner could easily have been a draw, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think they had the chances to definitely get something out of that game, and you'd be stupid to say not. But at the same time, I think we did enough to win the game and have a claim to winning it. For the first 60 minutes, we were open, and the end of the first half, and for a lot of the first half, it must have been an unbelievable game to watch the neutral, because it was so open in the midfield, just a lot of open space for people to run into. And I think we've got to give credit to Moyes. A lot this season against the top six, we haven't done that. We've sat so deep and eventually just sort of waited out in our bunker until they score. And that's why we had 2 points from 21 until this weekend. So the fact that we changed that gave us enough to win it. But at the same time, we did get our fair share of luck, which we haven't had in years, because a draw probably would have been minimum. If you're a Spurs fan, you'd be fuming.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Spurs fans having absolute meltdowns after the game, but ultimately, that could easily, and we're saying it could have been a draw. It could have been. They could have won that 3-2 with the chances they had. Harry Kane, I'm surprised he didn't score one of those. The one where Declan Rice makes that mental block. If Kane hadn't taken the extra touch before he played it across, it doesn't matter who you are, Declan Rice or Super Rice or anyone. If he played that pass a step sooner, that's a tap in for either one of them. Bell hits the bar again. I think Tottenham fans have an absolute meltdown about it, which is lovely to see, of course. But yeah, I don't think really, it wasn't like they got absolutely drubbed or they weren't in the game at any point. They were clearly the better team in the second half. But one more, lads, before we move on. Brilliant to beat Tottenham at home. Brilliant to go fourth. That's just 1 point Tottenham have got off of us all season. 4 points against Spurs. You'd have that every single season, wouldn't you? To never, ever lose to Tottenham again. But Pablo Fornals, I still nothing bad to say about him at all. Not a negative thing. I just don't really get him still. He seems to, especially on the ball. I know he works his absolute little Spanish socks off the ball, doesn't he? Running about all over the place. But I find on the ball, when we've got the ball, he just seems to slow things down a bit. He never does anything particularly incisive where I think, oh, that's excellent. He was billed to us as this really technical player coming over from Villarreal. I'm trying to gauge from your faces which one of you disagrees with me most at the moment, and it looks like Jones. So again, nothing bad to say about him, and I'll never ever, when he's in the team, think, oh no. But I expected Tom was going to be annoyed that Ben Rama wasn't playing, and Moyes likes to play Fornals against the bigger teams. But it's more when we're on the ball. I find myself getting frustrated quite a lot that the tempo seems to slow down whenever it gets played out to him, Jonesy.
I think we saw at the weekend the best thing that he brings to the team, and that's his fantastic dance moves.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll be honest, I couldn't take my eyes off his hips during that celebration. Just proper Spanish. It was wonderful. It was. But I kind of get where you're coming from. Shockingly.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it.
I mean, I kind of get it. I think the reason why David Moyes likes him, as you said, his work rate is second to none. He gives us those legs. He'll press. He'll happily press. But what does he bring? I think it's just consistency. He never really has a bad game, does he?
No, definitely not.
He does. I know he's in he's a completely different position, but he reminds me a little bit of Hayden Mullins in that you forget you forget he was in the pitch, but
until
he never
he's
has a
not.
bad game.
Yeah.
Exactly. He never has a bad game, but then you kind of never really notice that he's there. I think that, he got the assist for Lingard's winner. He does occasionally make those runs in behind, and does create space for his teammates with some of his runs in behind.
Did he? Did he get the assist, or did he just move out of his way?
He played it anyway.
He played it back into him, and then went to take the shot, and then got out of his way.
Right.
Thankfully, because he would have been offside.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
he would have missed as well.
There is that. Yeah.
That poor astronaut would have headed it back down to earth. I think all in, he's a safe pair of legs in midfield. He'll occasionally create something. He'll occasionally get the odd goal. Perhaps he might be a little bit underwhelming in terms of what we thought we were getting from Villarreal. But if he's going to just play consistently, put in a consistent 6 or 7 every week, then I'll take it all day long without the goals and assists, because he's got the work rate.
Definitely. Tom, just quickly on that one then before we move on that, I think the reason it came from at the beginning, James says there about his work rate, which is absolutely brilliant, and Jared Bowen I think is similar on the other side. I think his decision making can be questioned at times, but when you've got Benrahma sitting on the bench, I know you're a massive Benrahma fanboy, Tom, and I still have no real preference over the three of them, but we know that Benrahma works hard as well. He's not just a show pony, is he? He is great on the ball, but he does work hard as well, which therefore seems to me to suggest that he might bring slightly more than Fornals. I think the amount of times that Benrahma gives the ball away might be more because he is perhaps a little bit more of a risky choice for Moyes, which is why Fornals probably gets more time against big teams. But do you feel that it's like a head-to-head between them two for that last spot, seeing as Bowen seems to be an auto pick every week, or do you think it's just nice to have that variety for Moyes to choose from in that attacking line?
I think, firstly, I do think you're right. I think it is nice conundrum for Moyes to have 3 good players, and by all means, they're Premier League players to a man. And Fornals has played for Spain. Benrahma's international footballer. Bowen's taken to the Premier League very well in his first 18 months, so he should get better. So got 3 good players there. But the thing I think both of you said, I think Fornals gets picked because of his reliability. He's a bit like the Spanish James Milner. What you're going to get out of him, and maybe every now and then he'll pop up with some kind of contribution, and I love him, and I do, and he'd play anywhere for the shirt. Honestly, I think he's one of the few foreign players we've bought in for big money recently who loves it and absolutely is committed to the cause and really would go over and beyond for us. So I think I don't have a bad word to say about him, but I do think we lose quality when both Bowen and Fornals play. We don't have that presence of mind in the final third. I think Bowen, brilliant ball for the first goal, superb. But that happens once every 3 or 4 games with him, and we know he's got the quality to do it, and he gets in so many positions and he doesn't quite deliver, where I think we've seen Benrahma, when he actually gets in those final third positions, he rarely makes the wrong choice, and he always tends to create space and shooting opportunities for his teammates. So I think he deserves more football. I think he should get it, but I think against teams like Tottenham, I think playing Fornals is a safe bet, and I will never have a go at Moyes for that, however much I love Saïd Benrahma.
Perhaps Pablo Fornals probably wouldn't be surprised to see him against City at the weekend again to contain those big teams. Tom, I think there you've given me 2 contenders for the title of this week's podcast. Spanish James Milner was my initial favourite. Absolutely love that shout. And over and beyond, which appears to be a new phrase that you've come up with on the spot to replace above and beyond. Exactly. Tom Edwards special there. Well, lads, look, brilliant start to the show, some in-depth Spurs reaction. I'm delighted to say that me and Tom were lucky enough to chat to Tony Cottee, West Ham legendary striker, supersonic goal scorer and general goal machine, scored against Spurs on his debut. Me and Tom caught up with him on Monday afternoon after the game to get his breakdown. You'll hear that interview next, but just a quick one to say before you hear that Tony is doing a virtual audience session with his famous Boys of 86 strike partner, Frank McAvenny. That's on Friday night. It's 8 p.m. start, I believe. And if you head over to Tony's Twitter at Tony Cottee 9, there's all the details on how you can book tickets to that, and proceeds are going to the Bobby Moore Fund. I will give you more details. You'll hear more in the next section. Tony you'll tell you all a little bit about it as well. But if you like the sound of that, an audience with Tony Cottee and Frank McAvenny to hear lots of things about Tony's goal scoring exploits, or the pair of their goal scoring exploits on the pitch, as well as a few off-field shenanigans that I think Frank's going to tell you about. They're open to questions from fans. So go over to Tony Cottee at Tony Cottee 9 on Twitter to find out how to get tickets for that, or if not, send us a DM if you want. If you're struggling, send us an email, wearewesthampod@gmail.com, if you haven't got Twitter, and we can point you in the right direction. But stay with us, because that full interview with Tony Cottee is next. So you are still listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, Tom Edwards and James Jones. And as I've said 1,000 times since the weekend, if you can't be happy at the beginning of a week after West Ham have beaten Tottenham at home to get into the Champions League spots, then I'm afraid to tell you all that you never will be. But I'm delighted to say that joining us again on the We Are West Ham podcast is friend of the show, iconic West Ham striker and loved a goal against Tottenham, is Tony Cottee. Tony, brilliant for you with us again. I mean, just explain to me how you felt after that. You've scored goals against Tottenham. You scored one, of course, on your debut. That at the weekend, I was listening to the radio this morning. Your mate Gailey was on with Paul Coy, our mutual friend, on TalkSport 2, and he was saying, I didn't get Tony Cottee on this morning because I know he'd give it to me both barrels to Paul, who supports Tottenham. And what is it? You know, just to explain what that sort of thing. It still means so much to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think, I mean, obviously a lot of it's historic and well before you two youngsters were born, I might add, but there was lots of history. And as my dad always used to say to me, son, he said, if we're in the top flight, we don't like Spurs. He said, if we're in the Championship, we don't like Millwall. And that was as simple as it got. And I think it's passed down through the generations and, you know, the father to son and grandfather to father. So for me, as a West Ham fan, and then of course getting into the first team, you know, to play against Spurs, and especially as you've already said, on my debut and scoring on my debut, and then there was always a special meaning for me. And even when I played for other clubs, I just loved scoring against Spurs because of that growing up really as a fan. And I don't like the word hatred. I really don't. I don't like to say I hate anyone or anything. I think it's a very strong and powerful word, but I think it's fair to say we don't really like it, neighbours. I think that's about as diplomatic as I'm going to get, I think. So I think, you know, to put one over on Tottenham is always great. And that was following on from the fantastic 3-3 draw, you know, with the goal of the season from Lanzini, etc. So, you know, to get 4 points off what is a very good Spurs team, let's be honest about it. They've got some good players, you know. I think it was great. And it was great to be a West Ham fan last night, wasn't it? You know, I don't think we played brilliantly, but in terms of a result, it was a fantastic result. And I think if you ask the lads that come through the academy, particularly Deck, you know, Ben Johnson, Nobes, ask them what it means to play against Spurs, and they'll say the same as me.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Declan on TalkSport this morning. Great interview. I mean, I love every time he speaks, but he's just talking openly. Look, I don't care what David Moyes says about playing it down. I want to be in the Champions League, and I love winning against them. And it is brilliant to hear. Tony, I mentioned I text Paul this morning, Paul Coy, and said, Paul, you know, it's nothing to be sniffed at. Mid-table clubs like yours, you should be delighted you got a point off us Champions League certs. Does it? We've mentioned sort of what it means and that win yesterday, and it is every single season, whether we're floundering at the bottom, mid-table, or like this season, it always means loads to beat Tottenham, and the fans do absolutely love it. And often it's the best thing and the only thing that might have happened in a pretty glum season. But this year, do you feel like it means more? Because I know we got into the 4th place position, the Champions League spot. Obviously, it's yet to be seen whether we'll be able to hold on to that. That is going to be some task. But do you think it means more this year because of the position the team's in? Because for me yesterday, it felt like excellent. We've beat Tottenham, which is brilliant. But I felt so much more happy than I might usually because of the bigger picture, and it's so much nicer for that not to be the pinnacle of your season.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Well, I think, you know, in what you would call a normal West Ham season, we're either fighting relegation or we're in mid-table. That is what a normal West Ham season is, and we don't like to admit that, and we're not comfortable with it. But let's be honest, if you look at our results in the Premier League, the Premier League's been going, 28, 29 years now. You know, there's not been too many times where we've been up there pushing to get into Europe. You know, I think there was a few times certainly under the Harry Redknapp regime. And then there's been other sort of isolated seasons But it's been a while, really. We had that great season, the last one at Upton Park under Slaven, where we were sort of pushed in and in the cup quarter final, etc. But I think the difference this year is that we've been consistent, and it's not a word that you normally associate with any West Ham team, that word consistent, because we've been getting the results. I think since Christmas, New Year, I think we've been pushing and sort of in and around the European places. In other words, either sort of 7th, 8th and 6th and 5th, and now we've gone up to 4th. And I think that's what makes it better. That you're right. The victory against Spurs is great. It's always great. It doesn't matter whether you're getting relegated. If you beat Spurs, we're happy. We all know that. But I think to beat them and push your European credentials a bit more and get some more points on the board. It's the best points return since the famous '86 season. That's how good a season it is at the moment. And listen, if it all falls apart and we don't win another game between now and the end of the season, we still say, yeah, we beat Spurs, etc. I get all that, but I think there's a little bit more to this team. There seems to be a real discipline about the team, a confidence, a really good team spirit, and we've got some good players as well. And now we've got the right manager in place. There's no reason with what's been going. It's such a bizarre, weird season. We all know that. Whether it's only to do with the fans not being there or not, I don't know. But it's certainly played a large part in some of the crazy results we've had. But we've been very consistent this year, and we're not. I would say we're in full position and been lucky. I think we're in fourth position. We deserve to be there, and that is the biggest compliment I can pay everyone.
Tony, you're talking about this year, and you're talking about our upturn in form, and one of the main things is obviously Tomas Soucek. And yesterday again, he put in a blind of a performance, like the Terminator. Everyone said when he got hit, blood pouring out his head, he gets back up to make that block again. And he's been such a key man in our turnaround, along with Coufal. And you being in a dressing room, how much can one or two players make that difference? Because supposedly they're coming in and staying behind, and they're the ones sort of driving the mentality to be this European team. How important is it to have people like that come in, and how much of an impact could they actually put just down to those two, really?
Well, I don't think you could put it down to just those two. Let's not forget Jarrod Bowen's coming to the club, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 games, Jesse Lingard's been fantastic, hasn't he? So, there's been other signings as well. But I can liken it to the '86 season because, we had some very good players at the football club. And then we signed Frank McAvenny and Mark Ward, who went on to become great players for the football club. We got Alan Devonshire back from a long-term injury. So those 3 players coming back into a team that was already pretty talented anyway makes a huge difference, and it gives everyone a boost. And, especially if they fill key positions, positions that have perhaps been not a weakness, but a problem position. Certainly the right back, right wing back position, it was, we needed to get someone in there. We needed someone in midfield really to replace Nobes. And, I know Nobes is still about and part of the squad and everything, but, he's not been able to play regular because of Soucek's form. So, they've been 2 key players, and they can make a massive, they can play a massive part in what goes on in the dressing room. And also, if as well, we're like what you're saying, if they're working hard in training and they're winners and they're battling away and everything. And what I liked about Soucek yesterday was that, he's gone up for that header, a big whack of heads. It looked awful, didn't it, the actual incident? And as soon as the camera panned on him, blood pouring everywhere. And his first thought really was, how quick can I get to the dressing room to get stitched up and get back on, or put some Vaseline on me and get back on the pitch? And, we've seen many a player, I think, over the last sort of few years who, they have a little knock like that and you don't see him again. But not Soucek. There was even no way in a million years he weren't coming back onto the field of play, which tells you everything. They're both tough boys from the Czech Republic, but they're good footballers as well. And I don't want to praise them as the only 2 that have made a difference, but they've certainly made a big difference. There's no doubt about that, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just so nice to see, you've touched on it there, Tony, everyone pulling in the same direction. You only need to go back, just 6 weeks maybe, when Sebastian Haller was still playing up front. And obviously he's got talent, he's gone on, he's doing well at Ajax, but ultimately everyone could see it. No, what some factions of fans didn't want to say it because he costs a lot of money, and understandably sometimes supporters don't want to get too caught up in the negatives. They want to try and see positives and encourage these players. But Sebastian Haller wasn't cutting it. No matter how much he cost, he wasn't putting as much effort in as the rest. And you can see now that when you've got 11 who are all doing the same, the value in that has been huge to the team. Tony, before, I know Tom wants to ask you about a couple of milestones of your own, and I want to get your thoughts on what we can actually do this season. But you mentioned Mark Noble there, so I'll ask you now. What do you think would be, or what do you think might happen, or what do you think would be best for the club to do? Because there's so many fans this year. Mark tweeted after the game on the weekend and just said, "Have a lovely evening with the crossed hammers." Obviously, feels so. He's got such a bond with the fans, and understandably, when you put all those years and time and effort and loyalty into a club, you're going to get nothing but love in return, which is what Mark gets. There are understandable questions. He's alluded to it in interviews about he doesn't know how much he's got, how long he's got left, etc., etc. What do you think? Sort of, what do you make of that whole situation? What are your thoughts on it? Because for him to not get a send off in front of fans, that would be heartbreaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you might know more than me. Well, I don't know whether is his contract up at the end of the season, or is he?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
At the moment, yeah. Well, listen, I personally, I can't see any way that the club won't offer him a 1-year extension. I really don't. And you're right. You can't give him a send off with no fans. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know the club have made some poor decisions over the years. I can think of quite a few where they've not really done the right thing. But I think in the case of Mark Noble, you've got to make an exception. Listen, I don't think he should get a year as a token value. I think you should get a year for him that you put into the football club. And what the fans won't always appreciate, and particularly nowadays, even more so than when I was playing, is the captain is a huge part of what goes on in the dressing room. And it's not just about what you do on the field of play. The fans see what you're doing on the field of play, but they don't see what you're doing behind the scenes. They don't see you organising stuff for the boys. They don't see you organising the community aspect of things. That doesn't always get appreciated. So Nobes plays a massive part of what goes on off the field, as well as what's going on the field. You see the respect he's got as soon as he comes on the field of play. Funny enough, I don't think they've done it yesterday, but Deck can't wait to get his armband off. And I don't think he did it yesterday because there was only about 2 minutes left. I might be wrong, but I'm not sure if they passed the armband over. But anyway, I'm digressing. But, I know David Moyes thinks a lot of Mark Noble, an awful lot. And I don't think that he would allow a situation where Mark Noble was allowed to leave the football club or go and play elsewhere, without getting the send-off he deserves. If it's about money, I don't believe it would be, but if it's about money, why not give Nobes a smaller basic salary and give him a huge bonus every time he goes on the field of play? It doesn't matter if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, who cares? But at least he's earned his money, rather than saying we'll give someone a year's contract, getting what might be big money and not sort of playing. But I still think he's got an awful lot to bring to the table. He has to stay at the football club. The one thing I detest about football is when they don't look after their players that come through the system. And there's been too many examples. I can think of Steven Gerrard, one off straight away off the top of my head, John Terry at Chelsea, and Mark Noble at West Ham. Those players should still be at their football club. They should still be involved there, whether that's coaching, whether that's as an ambassador, whatever the player wants to do. Not everyone wants to be a manager. No one wants to be a coach. No one wants to go into the media. Sometimes just have an ambassador. When Mark Noble, he might retire and he goes through every game and he's just there. A bit like what Ledley King done for Spurs, I suppose. And now look at Ledley on the coaching staff. So I personally, I think Nobes has to stay at the football club, give him another year's contract, work out the money and what that means to Nobes and the football club, but keep him involved. He's a huge presence in that dressing room, huge. And we need him to stay at the football club because I think, especially if, as we all hope, we're in Europe next year, you need a captain and a leader to help you get around Europe and navigate all the issues and stuff that's going to go on with that campaign. So he has to stay 100%.
Tony, another thing on Noble, sort of his relationship with Declan Rice and how critical he's been to his fast track as one of the leaders now in the squad, and obviously sort of giving him into that mentality that he has and being a one club man. And obviously that's what we all would love Declan Rice to be. It's far-fetched. He's very young and he is one of the most talented players in the league. But how critical will it be for him to have a few more years with Noble, whatever that may be, if it's coaching or if it's part of the squad? Because ideally that's what we want. And Declan Rice can still do with a lot of learning. So how much do we need that to carry on in the next few years or so?
Well, of course, yeah, you're right, Tom. I mean, listen, don't forget that Deck would have, when the age that he joined the club, I think it was 14, 15, I think I'm right in saying. And from that moment,
14.
Yeah, he would have seen that the captain of the football club was Mark Noble. We're going back 6 or 7 years now. And then when a young kid comes through the academy, and, I had that with myself and that, because like a few years after I got into the first team, you had the likes of Stevie Potts come through, Stuart Slater come through, Paul Ince, these fantastic players. And when you come through the academy yourself, you feel an attachment with these players, and you feel like you want to help them and guide them, and just whatever you can do to make it easier, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, as I've already spoke about with Noble. So Deck would have the utmost respect for Mark Noble, and Deck would want him to stay at the football club. And I think all the players would as well, because you need that team spirit, you need that local lad, that leader and everything. And Deck would say that, I'm pretty certain he would say that as well, that he would want Mark Noble to stay at the football club. Yes, the armband's going to get passed on. We all know that Deck is our captain on the field at the moment, and going forward, we all hope he's there as captain for the next 10, 15 years. Let's hope so, because that means we've won things and we're doing things as a football club. But we need to keep Deck at the football club. And there's probably an argument that keeping Nobes at the football club that's going to help keep Deck at the football club at this moment in time, because you want him to be happy. You want your captain to be playing games and thinking that, like what he said on the radio this morning, I heard what he said, and he said that we believe we've got a chance of getting in the Champions League. If you want to keep Declan Rice at our football club, I've said it before, there's only two ways of doing that, and it ain't money. It's winning something or playing in Europe. They are the two reasons that I left the football club, and that's been going on, that other players have left to go and try and win things elsewhere, and that is what we've got to do with that. We need to try and win something or qualify for Europe. Even if we get in the Europa League, there's more chance of Declan Rice staying because of that than if we don't get in the Europa League. So let's hope we qualify for Europe. Let's keep Nobes at the football club, bring it all together, and why change it? That would be my argument, Tom. Why change it? Nothing's broken. Don't change it. Don't try and get rid of people. Just keep it as it is. Let the manager just keep slowly ticking over, and if there's a couple of bits of dead wood, you move them on and bring in a couple of players that want to play for the football club.
Yeah, it does feel like for the first time for such a long time, doesn't it, that there isn't loads of work that needs doing. There's some transfer windows you go into, or some seasons where you think, Jesus, where do you start here? Like, what
we need a couple of centre forwards. That's the one thing.
That is true.
No, I'm not joking. Listen, Mikel's a great player. We all know that, but he's prone to injury, for obvious reasons. We need to bring a couple of centre forwards in to take the pressure off him, so that when he's not quite fit or he's feeling a little tired or whatever, then you can play someone else. And listen, you try and bring in a bigger sort of target man type of player, and then bring in a little smaller goal scorer like myself or something that So you've got a nice little mixture, and then you've got the powerhouse of Antonio. And going into what we hope is going to be a European campaign next year, we're going to need three centre forwards. So I agree what you was just about to say. We don't need a lot in the transfer window, but come the summer, we do need to sign at least, in my opinion, at least one forward, maybe two.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we tried to always be balanced on this podcast, and West Ham fans can be, especially like with the stuff with the board. It's quite a strange time that we live in at the moment. There's a lot of anger amongst lots of parts of the fan base, and lots of it is totally justified and understandable. And I think then it just spills over into any issue that comes up. Original frustration that's there then spills over into things which might be slightly smaller at other clubs. But we all said the same thing in January. Whilst you don't want to be that doom merchant, unfortunately it did undermine or make more difficult our push for Europe by not adding a striker in, I think, which I just, it is frustrating. And again, you don't want to be pushing these negative things when we're playing so well at the moment. And if players can come in, play the false nine, whatever it is, then absolutely happy days.
Temporarily solved the problem, hasn't it? Jess Lingard has temporarily solved the problem, which is great, and I'm really pleased. He's been a great addition to the squad so far, but it was almost a case of they couldn't really win the club because, if you don't sign anyone, people moan, "Oh, we're not ambitious, we should have signed someone." And then if you do bring someone in, that a few years ago we brought in Jordan Hugill, do you remember? And he didn't really play at the club. We spent 8-9 million on him, and then he's moved on or whatever. And then everyone says, well, what did you sign him for? What a waste of money. You've got to be careful. So I think the compromise was exactly what the manager did. I don't think you should sign players in January. I think it's a real panic window, and you should always sign players in the summer. And to get in someone like Jesse Lingard that the manager knows, it gives him an opportunity to come to London and be the top boy at a wonderful football club. And that's exactly what you look at him. He's smiling, he's happy, and you think to yourself, you know what, we've got a real good chance. I hope they've done some sort of deal about we can buy him for X amount of pounds, because if he keeps playing like he is, then you then get vultures circling because they realise what a good player he actually is. So I hope we've got the first option on him to buy him in the summer.
Well, you wonder that, don't you? Because the way he's played now, you think Manchester United must be looking at it and going, oh, yeah, well, we'll be having him back. I know Fernandes is playing out of his skin, but for someone like that, they play so many games, don't they, United? Do you think they'd certainly want him back as well? But hopefully he just enjoys himself so much this season and decides that a fresh start and that he wants a bit more of that and something else, a bit more of a permanent deal would be great to see. Tony, you mentioned there about, you don't feel like, or you might have been a bit fortunate at the weekend, but obviously were with Spurs hitting the post and that sort of thing. That's why I'm enjoying this season so much, because I can only think back to, I think, Fulham at home with the Lookman penalty and maybe Aston Villa at home where we were clinging on. They're the only two games I think, we were lucky there. We were really fortunate. And the rest of the time, you do feel we deserve to be in and around where we currently are. Honestly, what is your genuine expectation for the rest of the season now? All the things we mentioned, striker, the games we've got coming up. What can we do this year?
Well, listen, potentially we can get in the Champions League. We know that is a realistic potential, if you like, because of where we are, the hard work we put in so far. I still think, bearing in mind we nearly got relegated last year, I still think it might be asking just a little bit too much to get into the Champions League. When it push comes to shove and the pressure's on and the big boys are all fighting for those places at the top, it's going to be very, very difficult. But having said that, listen, Leicester are in a great position as well, and I expect them to finish in the top four. I don't think Manchester United have been brilliant. I think at times have been grinding away. Everton have been really good and inconsistent also at the same time. Liverpool have dropped off the pace, but they will probably improve. And then, of course, you've got Chelsea under a new manager. So it's going to be very, very difficult for us to get into the Champions League spot, that's for sure. If we have a good run of form, if we maintain our good run of form, then, yeah, of course, we've got as good a chance as anyone of getting into that top four. Realistically, I'm expecting us to finish probably 5th, 6th or 7th. That's really where I think we're going to finish. And if we do that, and if we get into the Europa League, I think everyone will turn around and say, what a season that was. Shame that no one could watch the games and go to the grounds, etc. We all know that. But I think everyone will say that's a really good season. And then you get a good problem, because your problem is your squad's not big enough for Europe. You're going to be playing on Thursday and Sunday next year, etc. You then got to bring in the 2 forwards I spoke about. You've got to develop the squad. But that will be a nice problem. And I'm sure the manager will take that. That's a really nice problem coming into the season. My heart says we'll get in the Champions League. My head, being realistic, I think more like the Europa League.
Tony, Moyes is... Sorry, I was just going to say,
Tom,
Moyes is doing such a good job. Like, everyone can now see it, and he proved a lot of people wrong, including probably all 3 of us on the podcast. We never blamed him, but it seems an odd choice to pretty much every fan at the time. Not you, yeah, exactly. Not you, not a few. Yeah, but do you think he's even getting the credit he truly deserves for how he's handling the situation? Because even when he came out and gave the interview yesterday, straight to the point, not happy with the team and asking for more in it and not playing it down, but also being sensible. Do you think he's getting the credit he actually deserves for quite what he's done? Because he's turned one of the worst teams we've had in the last 20 years into the best team we've probably had in my lifetime. It was probably better than the Payet team. So I don't think he gets enough credit. Do you?
I think he is getting credit. I think that, let's put it another way. If he was to pick a manager of the year, Premier League manager of the year at the moment, then surely he would be the favourite, wouldn't he? I think, don't know. Brendan Rodgers.
He should be.
Yeah. But, whether he will or not depends on what happens over the next 13 games. We've got the games coming up and that. We've got a particularly difficult period. I think it's Man City, Leeds. Is it Man United, Arsenal? I think I'm right in saying something a lot like that. We've got some tough games coming up. So we'll find out exactly where we are. But listen, David Moyes, for me, he doesn't need to say anything because the results are saying everything for him. You don't need to come out and say, well, ha ha, I was right and I've proved everyone wrong and all that. So he doesn't need to say that, because, you know, he's doing it with his actions. You know, the results are speaking for themselves. He doesn't need to come out and say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He's doing exactly the right thing. He's playing it down. And then the expectations aren't there then. You know, we just, as a West Ham fan, you boys know this, as a West Ham fan, it's like getting in a roller coaster at the seaside. And you get on that roller coaster and you're up and down, up and down, up and down, and then you don't quite know where it's going to stop or whether you're going to do a loop now. And that's exactly what being a West Ham fan is. All football fans probably go through that experience, but as a West Ham fan, you seem to get on that roller coaster and it's a bit more bumpier than most other
Seems
clubs.
like a lot of loop-to-loops, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get, do you? So I think we're all just enjoying the ride. I think, you know, listen, I'm a fan. First and foremost, I'm a fan. And I'm just enjoying. I put my telly on in there and I sit back and I think, you know what, we've got a good chance here. And I'm enjoying watching the football. They're playing good football. They're getting good results. And it's most unlike West Ham. And I think it comes back to the manager. I think the manager's gone in there. And yes, he imposes discipline, and yes, he wants players to give 100%, and yes, he wants tries. But why not? Surely they're the first things you should. That's a given. And I think there's been times over the last 2, 3, 4 years where that's not been a given from certain players. So, you know, the manager's gone and he says, right, okay, you give me 100%, you do what I tell you, and you're going to play for me. And he brings everyone together. I've not been down the training ground for at least a year because of obviously what's been going on. But I know before COVID, it was a fantastic team spirit being built by the manager. So God knows what it must be like now. It must be an absolute dream going into work, like it was in the 86 season. You get to that stage, you can't wait to get into training because it's so good, and you're enjoying your training, you're having a laugh with your mates, and you're going and winning football matches. Happy days. So Moyes has done a great job. He really has. Still hasn't got a contract. So please, West Ham, give the manager a contract. He's up at the end of the season as well. I know there's an option for a year, but we get to the transfer.
He's signed that. He's triggered that. That option's been triggered.
Right.
But
okay.
they're in provisional talks.
Yeah, it's only for a year, isn't it? And not being funny, right? You're trying to sign a centre forward who's a top player for 20, 25 million pounds and that. You're trying to sign that centre forward, and the manager's got 1 year left on his contract, and he's asking you to sign a 4-year contract. That's not very good from the club's point of view. You should have a manager who's on a long-term contract. Give him the contract he deserves. What he's done, David Moyes, in both spells, by the way, not just this spell, in the first spell as well, he's been outstanding for this football club so far. And given time, he can potentially do what he did at Everton, which is to get them into the Champions League. And that's what, if he does that for West Ham, he'll be a legend forevermore. We all know that. But give him the contract to allow him to do that. He's been brilliant so far. Manager of the season so far, yes, David Moyes for me. But we've got 13 games left, some tough games in there. And will he get the credit? I think that was the original question. Will he get the credit he deserves? He will do at the end of the season. If he gets West Ham in Europe, you know, I think the fans are he's slowly won them over. And I think they all appreciate now how good the manager is. And he will get the credit at the end of the season if West Ham are in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reports at the moment, or latest reports, suggesting that they're in provisional talks about signing a new 3-year deal. The club approached him, and I think Moyes, and he's in such a strong position now that he's turned around and said, well, you know, that's what I'd like, but it's dependent on certain scouting and transfer plans being put in, which I think is brilliant and is good for the club overall. Tony, we've got 7 minutes left, so we've got you on today. It's absolutely brilliant to have you back joining us again. It only seems like a couple of weeks ago we were talking before we come on air. I think it was November the last time we spoke to you, but it's brilliant to have you on again. But on Friday night, you're doing something a little bit different. You're doing a virtual audience, you and your infamous strike partner Frank McAvenny from that Boys of 86 season that you've mentioned. £15. It's a virtual thing. Proceeds go to the Bobby Moore Fund. Fans can go to @TonyCottee9 on Twitter for more details. They can win a signed first team shirt, I understand. Just tell us a little bit more about that. Let me know if I've missed anything. Fans expect.
Yeah, I've got the signed shirts upstairs, so I've got that, and we'll be doing a free raffle, a bit like the FA Cup draw, you know, where you give it pick the name out. I'm going to read the name out, and that will be the winner of the shirt. But no, I spoke to Frankie, and he's up in Glasgow, and I think it's been tough for him because obviously he's up there and everything's locked down. And it's been tough for me. It's been tough for everyone because you can't do what you want to do. And I said to him, look, I've got an idea. Do you fancy doing this? He said, yeah, great, love to do it. So it'll be the two of us on obviously on a Zoom call. You know, I'm in Essex and he's in Glasgow. The fans will be tuning in, and hopefully we'll have lots of guys tuning in. And it's your chance to ask us the questions. Frank's already done a video. I asked him to do a video clip for me promoting the event. And Frank's words were, if there's any questions about football, Tony will answer them. If there's any questions about anything else, I will answer them. And that tells you everything you know about Frank McAvenny. So I'd love to say it's an evening with Frank, but if you say things like that, he'll want to go at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I don't really want to go at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's an audience with myself and Frank. And you've already said, if you can go to my Twitter page and just sort of clock in there, have a little look, all the details are there, and please come and join us, and we'll have a great night. It starts at 8 o'clock on this Friday, 26th of February, and we're looking forward to having a bit of fun.
Great stuff. So that'll be fans can ask you questions like a live forum and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Whatever they want, they can ask Frank whatever he wants. I think Frank doesn't like talking about football, so I'm sure the subject will go on to other things, which is fine.
Yeah, I think when we had him on earlier in the season, he was telling us one about where he was a little bit hungover. So he called John Lyle and told him that he couldn't make it into training that day. And John Lyle said, well, there's ITV and BBC cameras outside. You booked him for an interview today. He said, can you sort it, John? He said, yeah, no problem. And Frank said 20 minutes later, a load of TV trucks turned up outside his flat in Romford or whatever it was. So yeah, plenty more stories like that. For those of you listening to the podcast, just head on over to Tony's Twitter at Tony Cottee 9, like you just said, and there's all details on there where you can book your tickets. And great to hear as well, Tony, some of the money going to the Bobby Moore Fund. We're raising a few quid for that charity this year as well. So West Ham
it's a great charity, Will. You know, and Steph, Steph is a really personal friend of mine, and it's been tough. All the charities have suffered during COVID. So anything we could do to bring money in, I think it all helps.
Absolutely. We'll head on over there. Tony, quick one before we let you go. The Man City game at the weekend, what your thoughts on the score prediction, then we'll say goodbye.
Oh, dearie me. Well, again, it's a heart and head one. I mean, you can't believe how well Man City have done. Bearing in mind, they've not had a centre forward and they've won the last 18 games. Law of averages, they're due a defeat or a draw. So, listen, why can't we go there? I want to see us go. I'll tell you not what I expect, but what I want from West Ham. I want West Ham to go there and have a real go. I don't want us to put 11 men behind the ball, sit on the edge of our own box and wait for them to pick us off and Sterling taps in from 2 yards out. I don't want to see that. I want to see us go there with a positive attitude. I watched Arsenal yesterday. They looked scared stiff of Man City. Yeah. And there's no reason for us to be scared. We've got a good team. We've got good players. We've got a good manager who will tactically set us up to hit them on the counter-attack. And let's see how good they are. And we'll see how good we are as well. And I think it's a really fascinating game to watch. I'm going to be watching the game. In terms of results, it's hard to say we're going to go there and win, but I might go for a sneaky 1-1 draw. And if we get a draw at Man City, I think everyone will go, wow, we are the real deal this year. So it's a big game for us. And it's a big game for City as well. Because I think if City win that and other teams lose, then, it'll be a bit of procession. It looks like they're going to win the league. But the Champions League places, as we've spoken about, are well up for grabs. And if we can get a draw, everyone will look at that result and go, do you know what? They're serious contenders here. We need to get our act together. So let's hope they're putting a good performance. It's more about the performance, I think, that I want to see. Rather than the result, I want to see a good performance from us.
Absolutely. Well, Tony Cottee, thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant to have you. Remember, everyone, if you want to check out that event, the audience with Tony and Frank on Friday, 26th of February, go over to Tony's Twitter and stay with us on the We Are West Ham podcast because it's the Betway charity bets next. So that was legendary West Ham striker Tony Cottee there. Great to hear insight from a man who scored against Tottenham on his debut as a teenager for the club you support. What feeling that must be. You just into Tony, want me there. He's such a nice bloke, and it's so great that we get him on. Always really friendly. As soon as we come off the call, saying, whenever you need me again this season, lads, just give me a shout, which is wonderful. But can you just imagine, like, you talk to him, and he, like I say, he's so friendly, but you're talking, and it hit home to me there. You're talking to a man who has done something that the rest of us, or us three, just imagine, can never even dream of that. Well, I could dream of it, but you'd give your right arm to be able to do that, wouldn't you? Just once, let alone playing the hundreds of games you did for West Ham. But imagine as a teenager playing for West Ham, you score on your debut against Tottenham. Like, we're all feeling absolutely buzzing about the weekend because we've watched our team beat Tottenham. But just imagine like having that passion for the club and actually going ahead and doing it on your debut. Loves a goal. Loved the goal against Tottenham for the rest of his career, Tom, didn't he? I think he got a few for Everton and Leicester against Spurs as well. But no, absolutely brilliant. So thanks very much for Tony. And just don't forget, you can go and get tickets for that event that he's doing, him and Frank McAvenny, on Friday night. If it's something if you're anything like me and you've heard your dad or your granddad or uncles, whoever it is, aunties, nans, mums, whoever it is, who might have been watching West Ham in the era that Tony played, bend your ear about the 85-86 season, how phenomenal it was watching them two at play. Let them know it might be something they fancy. And you can go over to Tony's Twitter at Tony Cottee 9 for details on how to buy your tickets. Great stuff as well that Tony's donating some of the proceeds to the Bobby Moore Fund. And talking of the Bobby Moore Fund, what a seamless link that was, Jonesy. The Betway charity bets are back for a week. Me and the lads, courtesy of a £50 charity stake that we each get from Betway for each of West Ham's Premier League games this season, the winnings from which go to our nominated West Ham charity that we are playing for. I'm playing for the Bobby Moore Fund, which some of Tony's money from the event on Friday is going towards. James is playing for the DT38 Dylan Tombides Foundation, and Tom Edwards is of course playing for Isla's Fighter Cause, particularly close to West Ham fans' hearts at the moment. Isla's been having chemo recently, been having a bit of a tough time this week, but still going strong, still battling through. So all of our love and thoughts and prayers to Ireland. Delighted to be able to chip in a few quid. Chad from Betway sent over just over £1,200 which is some of the money that we've already raised this season, to the fund. And everyone else, West Ham fans, are doing such good work recently, raising money and chipping in to that pot to hopefully help Isla get through in this long battle that she's been fighting at such a young age. But lads, the Spurs bets. Tom, you were agonisingly close, weren't you? I think it's fair to say that you've probably been the worst performer of the season, or the least best. We'll call you the least best. Bronze medal position. You're still on the podium, mate. It doesn't matter, there's only three of us. But we'll come to Jonesy at the end of this segment for an overall update, if that's all right, James, on how much money. Just remind everyone how much we've raised so far. But Tom, you were very, very close against Tottenham, weren't you?
Yeah, I was trying to work it out. I think it's about the 9th bet I've been one of the three things away, something like that. So yeah, it's part bad, but it's also been quite a bit of luck. I've missed one or two on corners, one or two on the VAR at the very end against Leicester. This one, just a jarring call. But yeah, it is frustrating. It will come. I've got a feeling
What was your bet? Just remind everyone what your bet was.
Yeah, the bet was West Ham to win, under 2.5 goals, and the other
over 5.5 corners.
Yeah, over 5.5 corners, exactly. Yeah, I just want one to fall now. I think, fingers crossed it will, and it's getting tough because obviously Isla's going through what she's going through at the minute, and it's desperately trying to get some money for her. So thinking with my thinking hat this week.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. I say that the money have already transferred over. We're still going well. Jonesy, you went draw, both teams to score on over 4.5 corners, not even close. I couldn't really bring myself to pin the result down, so I just went both teams to score, Kane to score, and I went for cards bet initially, but we couldn't have the cards one, so then I swapped that out for Kane to score and Soucek to score, so I missed out on two of my elements there. But it was a bit naughty on the cards, wasn't it? After Craig Pawson seemed to, someone finally let him know midway through the first half that he was actually allowed to book Tottenham players for clearly cynical fouls, and then he couldn't stop giving them out after that. But look, Man City this week, lads. Jonesy, what have you gone for the City game? This is a Saturday lunchtime trip to the Etihad Stadium.
I've gone for over 3.5 goals, because there's just always goals, mostly for City, but I can't bring myself to to back City in this bet. Unlike you, mate, that backed an opposition goal scorer last week. Still can't get a bit brown on that, but I've gone for both teams to score. I think we're still good for a goal. We don't get many against City, but I think this season has been a bit of an exception when it comes to things like that.
We do better away than at home, don't we? To be fair.
Yeah, our away record this season has been good, but Soucek to score as well was my third leg of the bet. He's due a goal. He's not scored in about 2 games, so he's due a goal from midfield. And I was going to go Lingard, given he's back in Manchester. He want to get one over City, wouldn't he? But I just don't know whether we're going to get as many chances from open play as we did against Spurs, and sort of clear-cut chances like we did. I think if we're going to score, it's going to be from a set piece or as a result of a rebound off a corner or a free kick. And Soucek's normally in and around those positions and those situations. So Soucek's my man, and I was a bit closer than you gave me credit for in the Spurs game. All I needed was one of those that Son deflection that came off his shin to go in, and I would have had the bet in because I had the draw. So
I wonder why he seemed a bit gutted after the game that we hadn't drawn.
Yeah. just wanted some money in the pot.
Yeah, absolutely furious. Yeah, well, look, my thinking exactly there, Jonesy, on the City game. I'll read mine out, Tom, if that's all right first, because it's a nice little link. A goal in each half, more than 8.5 corners, and Craig Dawson or anytime. Yeah, exactly what you're thinking there, Jonesy. I think if we're going to score, it's going to be from a set piece, I think. And Dawson, he's been unlucky recently. He's got his head on a few in the box, floating into the right positions, and it just hasn't quite dropped in the back of the net recently. But yeah, I fancy big Craigie Dawson giving John Stones and Ruben Diaz a run for their money up at the Etihad. So, Tom, your effort to win some money this week, what have you gone for?
I've gone a bit ambitious, but I've gone draw over 8.5 corners and both teams to score. I do think there'll be goals in this, but I think if they're on a run, I know it's typical football fan thing to say, but they're due a game where they drop points and are a bit off form, and we're right bang in form, and we've got a lot of weapons which don't really suit them, particularly in the air, like both of you two have alluded to, which I think is a pretty good effort, pretty good bets those. But yeah, I just think if we get our nose in front, we're a very tough team to pile it on against, however good you are, and we've got that confidence to pull through. So fingers crossed, I have a big winner.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, fingers crossed for all three of us here. Fingers crossed West Ham can get a result. Yeah, I think, Tom, I'd snap your arm off for a draw right now. I think City in absolutely scintillating form at the moment. But just a reminder that you can, if you like the sound of those bets, you can back those on the Betway website and app. Just go to the pre-built bets section and scroll down there and you'll find the We Are West Ham podcast bets. It'll have my name, James's name, and Tom's name on the bets that we've just read out there. So if you like the sound of them and want to have a little flutter yourself, head on over to the Betway website for that. And thanks again, just quickly while we're on that, Chad from Betway sorted out getting that money over to Isla's fight early, midway through the season, because he knows how much they need the money at the moment. Betway also donated. They've put in a game in the lounge, a couple of tickets for a game in their lounge as soon as fans are allowed back in. They put that in for a raffle for Isla's fight, which fans were allowed to bid on, and Alan Alga sorted out transferring, I think, £5,000 to the Isla's fight as well. So great stuff from those guys. Jonesy, just a quick one. How are we looking for the season, our league table? How much money have we raised so far for our charities?
So you're still leading the way with 1,310 for the Bobby Moore Fund. I've got £547.50 for DT38, and Tom has got 260 quid for Isla's fight. And obviously, the Red Man got his win, 1,100 quid, which is going to be split evenly across all three charities at the end of the season. So that makes it £3,217.50 between us. Then you double it, because Betway are going to match it very, very kindly at the end of the season. So it's £6,435 raised so far with 13 weeks left.
Wonderful stuff, mate. Absolutely wonderful. If we get to that 10 grand mark by the end of the season, what a feeling that'll be, to raise 10 grand
definitely
for charity. So that's great stuff, lads. And fingers crossed we can pull through with one of those this week. And to let us know whether or not our bets have got any chance, I'm delighted to say that the next up is Man City fan Steve Tudor to talk to us about that game at the Etihad on Saturday lunchtime in the opposition view. That's next. So that was the Betway charity bet section there. Fingers crossed, as we were saying, that me and the lads can pull at least one of those bets through this week to add a little bit of money to those already fairly impressive pots of money that we've raised so far this season. I'm delighted to say, though, that joining us for the Opposition View segment is a returning guest. It's Steve Tudor from the 9320 podcast, big Manchester City fan, to look ahead to that game at the Etihad on Saturday lunchtime, 12:30 kickoff. Steve, you're playing absolutely outstanding football this season. Clubs and managers all over the place saying you're the best team in Europe at the moment, etc., etc., etc. Everyone had handed it to Liverpool again before the season started, and I think you've sort of gone about your business quietly. I, like a lot of West Ham fans, have got a huge soft spot for Manchester City. I think, as you were saying off air then, that at your core, a lot of your fans, are still like supporting a Division 2 club. I think there's an affinity with West Ham fans and City fans because of that. So I always love it when you're playing good football, even though other fans across the country might not. But you're 10 points clear of United. Do you look back now and say, when people were saying, United are in the title race and Tottenham are in the title race, do you look back and laugh at those two silly clubs now?
No, because I was one of those people.
Oh.
Yeah, I was. I put a tweet up. Funny enough, it was when Spurs played you boys. And at half-time, I said, you know what? I seriously fancy Spurs for the title this year. And then 45 minutes later, I went off to do something, came back, and I had about 100 notifications on Twitter, just basically laughing emojis from people. I was like, what has happened? And as for United, at one stage, I didn't think they'd go all the way. They've got flaws there at United, but I thought, you know what, they could push us. They could challenge consistently to the end. But I didn't see this coming from City. No one saw this coming from City, to be honest. It came from nowhere. We lost at Spurs, and then suddenly we were just completely transformed.
Is that what is that what it was like then? That even City fans didn't see it coming? Because a lot of the time, with football fans, that obviously you're watching your own club and you watch every single minute that they play, and you get more of a sense of what's actually going on, whether you're being unlucky or you're particularly lucky during a period of time. But this has come out of nowhere for you guys as well, isn't it?
It's come out of absolutely nowhere because we had kind of faults in the system and we looked shattered as well. For 2 years, we were incredible. Last season, we had a sustained dip. And then that just persisted and Liverpool ran away with it. And when this season started, we looked better, but it was still there. Some of the play, it looked like we were in need of an overhaul. And those players, basically, that Pep had run them into the ground as regards to the system that he plays, because he's a very demanding manager. And it takes a lot to be that intensively brilliant week in, week out. And so I really thought that we were going to need 3 or 4 new players. We were going to have a transitional season this year. No one expected Ruben Diaz to be as brilliant as he's been. And absolutely no one expected John Stones, never mind to play your career best football, but to be fit week in, week out. Yeah, so it's our defence more than anything, what's brought us where we are. And then you've got the false 9 up front with no Sergio Aguero. No one could have predicted this, to be honest, mate. And it's been a huge and very pleasant surprise.
Steve, you mentioned, see, Diaz, Stones and that false 9, but I mean, I look back to when we played at London Stadium back in October, and it was a 1-1 draw. And I remember West Ham going into that because City were in a bit of a difficult position, sort of in and out of form. Aguero was fit, then he weren't fit. I think he limped off at half time in that game as well. What's changed between? Is it just literally those two centre halves consistently playing well and the decision for a false 9 probably forced into the fact that Aguero's not been fit for most of the season, or has Pep done something different? Is it a change in system, change in mentality? What is it? Because we were confident back then, and definitely not confident this time around.
Well, you've lost 1 in 11. You're in good form. We never seem to. We have got a good record against you boys, I know, but we have struggled against you. I remember a game at the Etihad a few years ago where Jesus scored in the last minute. We couldn't break you down. Moyes is just a master tactician when it comes to setting himself up against City. But as regards to the changes, I mean, obviously Diaz and Stones has been phenomenal, but what that has meant is we were playing a double pivot in midfield, and that was incredibly unpopular with City fans. It kind of had an impact further forward with De Bruyne and his creativity. The opposition was getting through us, so it just made it pointless anyway. Because Rodri, is a great player, Rodri. I love him, but he's not blessed with a lot of pace. And as soon as he dropped that double pivot, we changed. Now, I think in hindsight, Pep was always going to do this. I think basically he gave Rodri a bouncer alongside to just get to know his role, perfectly at how he wanted him to play. And as soon as he moved Gundogan forward, I mean, Gundogan scored 11 goals, I think, this season. And suddenly we had that extra man there, particularly in wide areas with the overloads. That's basically City's attacking play, creating overloads. And we were able to do that again with Gundogan pushing forward. So that's been a big difference. And they know now that we can just have Rodri stationed there because at the back, we've got a back four that they can rely on. Whereas previously we didn't, we had to protect that back four at all times. Now we don't have to.
Steve, for me, Phil Foden's probably one of the most exciting players in world football. He's the best British talent by a million miles. He's always looked like he was going to be it. But this year sort of feels like the coming of age. You've seen a lot.
Told you, James. Sorry, Tom, I'm really sorry to interrupt your question. Told you, James, didn't I? He's less than 5'7". He likes a step over or two. Tom likes him. That's all it is. Stop pretending because he's good, Tom. That's all it is.
He's left-footed, but since he's
sorry, mate. Sorry,
crack on. No, not even. But since the Under-17 World Cup, and I got a chance to watch him, I loved him. Yeah, I am a stickler for a left-footed technician. And he's exactly that. But how good do you think he can be? You've seen a lot of players down the years, Silva and all them, but Foden's formative years are under one of, if not the greatest manager of his generation, or if all time by the end of his career. So how highly do you think he can get, and how good do you think he can actually be?
Well, William said earlier that, when you watch your own team week in, week out, things that other fans don't know. And we have been pissing ourselves now for the past year because all the narrative has been is, should Foden go out on loan? Is Pep giving him enough game time? We've known that he is loving it at City. He's playing for his childhood club. He's training with Silva and De Bruyne and all the best players, Aguero, every single day. He's playing under the greatest manager in the world, in my opinion, Pep Guardiola. And he was getting far more game time than anyone. If you go back to Scholes or Beckham or Lampard or whoever, he's got more game time at his age than they had. So everything was just dandy with Phil Foden in City. And yet, if you watch the game, the commentator would spend 5 minutes wringing his hands about the future of English football. This season, he has basically made the impact that we knew he would. And yet, even though we've known he's going to make this impact, you can't but fail to be surprised by it. I mean, his age and what he does at that age, it's unbelievable. The impact that he makes, the influence he has on the rest of the team, and the difference he makes. He did the same against you boys. Came on at half-time, scored the goal. He's a difference maker. And what he does right now is, because he has to play in that kind of front three, is because he's like a puppy, basically. He just runs everywhere. And no matter what Pep tells him, whilst the game's underway and the passion's, the adrenaline's through his body, he just runs everywhere. And so Pep has just stuck him out wide. But in time, he'll come in and he will be that successor to David Silva. But what a player City got. I'm Welsh, but fair dues. I am so chuffed for England to have a player like him because he's going to win you the World Cup. He is a very, very special player.
Well, that's if he can get into the team ahead of Lingard, Steve. I think you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself there. But
how was he doing? No, but how's Lingard doing? I know he scored a couple of goals. Is he playing well?
Oh, that's what sort of brought us up to giving Tom a bit of a rip in there, because Tom just loves anyone who plays here. If he's a CAM, attacking midfielder, if he's less than 5'8" and he does a few step overs, he's right up Tom's street. Yeah, he's been brilliant. so far. He's just, I think one game, Fulham away, he was a bit quiet, but everyone was pretty dead in that game, to be quite honest. But since then, yeah, he's been revolutionary. Only earlier in the show we were saying none of us can really believe how quickly he's hit the ground running. Delighted to see it, but I think all of us, bar Tom, were a little bit perhaps. Is this a bit of an underwhelming signing? Has he played his best football already? But no, he started brilliantly. Steve, you mentioned David Moyes and how tactically astute he is against Manchester City. He hasn't won a game against you since March 2013, 2-0 home win for Everton. He's played, I think, 8 times since then, be it for United or for West Ham, and he's only got one draw. The draw for 1-1 draw for us, obviously earlier in the season. But since that 2013 win for Everton, he's lost every single game against you. How do you see it going this weekend? We drew against Tottenham earlier in the season, got what we thought was a good point at the time, and then made it 4 points off of them this season. Last weekend, we drew with you earlier in the season. Is there a chance? We are better against you at the Etihad. You always slap us at London Stadium, but we always give a better account of ourselves away from home. How do you see the game going this weekend?
First I should say it's a bit symbolic, this game, for City fans, because we've had such a gruesome run with Liverpool, Arsenal, Everton, I can't remember the other, and there's one other, and West Ham, and we looked at it as, a 5-game really tough game run of games, and we were all basically saying on the forums, if we can win all those, we've won the league. So City fans are the most pessimistic fans you'll ever meet. We're 2-0 up with 5 minutes to go, and we'll think we're going to lose 3-2 even now. And yeah, if we beat your boys on Saturday, I'm going to just basically see Manchester City fans with 12 games to go, or how many games is it? 13 games to go, saying we've won the league. So it's really important in that regard for City fans. As to whether we'll do that or not, I don't fancy it. I'm predicting a draw. I really think he'll set up Moyes to basically nullify our false 9. Very hard to read, an impossible job for Ogbonna. The movement is impossible. I mean, if you watch City on the telly and you concentrate on that front 3 with the kind of fullbacks pushing on, you can't see what they're doing. It's kind of, you can follow it for a couple of minutes and then you lose track. And you think, wait, Foden's now on the right. But so if you're actually there as a centre-back and you don't know whether to come deep or kind of follow or let him go, you don't know what to do. So that's the hard part for West Ham. But I think Moyes is going to set you up right. I think it's going to be a really tough game. The key thing for me is we've been scoring early, and we never used to score early under Pep. I think I've got the things here. In 10 of the last 17 games, we've scored inside the first 20 minutes. In 6 of the last 17 games, we've scored inside the first 10 minutes. That is really not like us. So if your boys can basically, if it's 0-0 after 20 minutes, then I fancy you to go to distance. I fancy it to be another 1-1. You've scored, 61% of your goals in the second half this season. So yeah, if it's tight in the second half, I will be generally worried.
Oh, there we go. That sounds a little bit more upbeat than I was expecting, Steve. Thanks for that. I mean, when it's 6-0 at the weekend, we will be getting you back on and say we'll never get you back on again, actually. But, right, just so you mentioned a quick one there, but just cement that score prediction for us before I get the thoughts of the lads.
I think 1-1. I think City will score first, West Ham equalise.
1-1. Well, we'll have some of that big time. Tom Edwards particularly will, because that's exactly what he's had he's had a draw for his Betway charity bet. Tom, score prediction, please.
Yeah, without following Steen, I think 1-1. I think we might go ahead and then sit out and then just concede at the death, but hold on for a draw. That's my loose prediction.
Excellent, James.
I'm going to go for my favourite, Desmond.
Desmond.
But both our goals will come from set pieces. I don't see us getting many opportunities from open play. And yeah, we just won't stop City from scoring. So yeah, 2-2.
Okay, well, I'll have some of that. I refuse to be the only one on the podcast who goes for a City win. I can already feel John Goodman, David Soucek, I think, are my two favourites on Twitter the last week or so, giving me grief about my my negative attitude and projected pessimism, I think, was one of the words David said to you. So I'm not going to go for a City win, but I'm going to say a 0-0. They've had that a few times this season, haven't we? Where two giants of the league go up against each other in a top of the table clash, and they've been a little bit underwhelming. So I'm going to go for a 0-0 goalless draw. Well, look, Steve Tudor there from the 9320 podcast, big Man City fan. Thanks so much for that, to helping us look ahead to Manchester City versus West Ham at the Etihad on Saturday lunchtime, 12:30 kickoff. Stay with us because we've got more competition next with Name That Game. So Steve Tudor there from the 9320 podcast, big time City fan. He's giving West Ham some hope, lads, which is nice. And one man who looked like he didn't have any hope at all in weeks gone by on Name That Game is James Jones. He was streets ahead for ages, and then it looked like he just absolutely fallen to bits. Didn't know what he's doing. You'd have thought he'd never watched a West Ham game in his whole entire life. But in fact, he has. The scores are a little bit closer now. The lead in that game. James Jones on 28 points, Tom leading on 32, and I'm wedged evenly in the middle on 30. So lads, we've got no time to mess around. We've got 9 minutes to finish off this segment in, so no faffing. I'm the quiz master this week. For anyone who doesn't know the rules of the game, each week the quizmaster picks a West Ham game from history, collates 7 necessary pieces of information for the game, reads them out one by one, and lads get a point for interrupting and guessing the next one. They get a point for each one. The the piece of information are the obscure fact about the game, the scoreline, an opposition goal scorer, West Ham goal scorer, the stadium in which the game took place, West Ham's opponent, and the season. If it's level after that stage, it goes to a tie break, and the exact year the game took place. Right, lads, I'm having it. Get straight into it. I hope you're both ready. You both look it. One of the goal scorers moved within 1 goal of his club's all-time scoring record when he scored in this game. That is the obscure fact about the game.
2-0.
Tom, son, Tom's gone 2-0. That is incorrect. James, fancy having a go at the scoreline?
3-1.
3-1 is incorrect. The scoreline was 4-2.
Yeah. Can I go?
Tom sounds confident. So I need an opposition goal scorer next, please, lads. Tom, I'll go to you.
Michael Owen.
Michael Owen is correct. Thomas Edwards. Michael Owen scored a hat-trick. He knows the game already. James Jones is nodding confidently. So, James, I'll throw to you. It's 1-0 to Tom. And I need a West Ham goal scorer from you, please.
Oh, I saw highlights of this game recently, very recently. I'm going to say... No. Oh, no, this has got me. Marlon Harewood.
Oh, he's pulled it out of the bag. James Jones makes it 1-0. What a guess. Yeah, so Marlon Harewood. So for Newcastle, Michael Owen got a hat-trick. Alan Shearer got the other one and moves within the goal, like I said there, of Newcastle's all-time goal-scoring record set by Jackie Milburn. Owen with the hat-trick. And West Ham's goals were scored by Marlon Harewood and a Nobby Solano own goal, funnily enough. So, Tom, I need the stadium from you, please.
It was at Upton Park.
That is correct. That is 2-1 to Tom Edwards. James Jones, the opponent, please.
Newcastle
United is correct. So, Tom, for the win, overall 2-2 going into the very last question, I need the season in which the game took place from you, please.
I think I know it, this one. I think 2005, 2006.
2005, 2006. James Jones does not look happy, and he's got every reason to look concerned because Tom Edwards, that is correct. 2005, 2006, December 2005. In fact, West Ham United 2, Newcastle 4. That was in the FA Cup final season. But I always remember that. Michael Owen didn't do a great deal for Newcastle, did he? Never seemed too happy there. But as always in football, anyone who's having a bad time at another club, their fortunes will always turn around against West Ham. Yeah, he bagged a hat-trick. I remember sitting there in the East Stand and he just looked like he wasn't even that good. They weren't like classic Michael Owen goals. I just remember him sniffing around the edge of the penalty area. yeah, just banging them in. None of them were that pretty. They're all very, very annoying stuff. I don't even know, lads, why that game popped in my head. Were you both at that one?
I was
I
there.
think
Yeah.
I was at that one.
Yeah.
Tom,
I think I was
Tom
there.
went. Tom, was that your 5th birthday party you had there?
I think 5.5. We celebrated that one that year, but no, I remember it vividly. I just remember him grabbing the ball and clapping the Newcastle fans because I sat where the dugouts were and they walked in, and I just as I was leaving, he was walking back in with the ball, and I just have one of them vivid ones you have a memory of because it's quite a big moment in Premier League for him, I guess. It's the sort of the last good thing he did. So yeah, I remember it quite clearly, that one. Good game though.
Yeah, you got it quite quickly from the scoreline. I can't say I would have remembered that. But Josie, were you at that one?
I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I was there, but nothing. I remember the game, sort of, the scoreline and the fact Michael Owen scored a hat trick. I probably would have been there, but I don't remember much of being there. But I probably would have been, because as everyone knows, I go to all the home games and not the away games. So
yeah, unless you're playing rugby, wasn't it?
unless I'm playing rugby, or yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, fair play.
I was
mate.
retired by then.
That was a big win there for Tom, but some big important points for you, Josie. Grabbing Marlon Harewood somewhat out of the blue. Well played. That puts the overall scores. Tom is 5 points ahead of next place, which is me and James, actually. I'm on 30. Jonesy moves up to 30 points overall. Tom goes out in front on 35, and Tom with another opportunity next week to earn some points back. James, you are quizmaster for the next week, so it looks like you might be rooted back to that bottom. Hopefully I get a point. Tom done me 5-1 last time when we went head to head, so fingers crossed for a better performance from me. But lads, that's nearly it. We've got the one last segment, the West Ham women. It will only be a brief one because there's been no games in the week, but we've got that next. So name that game there, another commanding victory. Not as commanding this time, just a victory for Tom Edwards. No shame in losing 3-2 to Tom Edwards when he's in the form he's in from James Jones there, but things are a little bit more spread out in that leaderboard of ours in Name That Game. But Jonesy's in the hot seat next week, so one to look forward to. Lads, the West Ham women, nothing has really happened since we last spoke. Obviously, some of the girls away on international duty. The girls still 11th in the WSL, just 2 points off bottom place Bristol City. They lost 1-0 away to Brighton on the 10th of February, which was the girls' last game. Another disappointing defeat, and they've got Chelsea off Sunday the 7th of March, that is. So we've got another weekend off this week. But lads, just one thing to note on the West Ham women. Martha Thomas was off on international duty with Scotland, and she scored twice as Scotland beat Cyprus away 10-0. She was and the goals were spread as well between 7 players, which was quite impressive. But 2 goals from Martha, I hope give her a bit of confidence, but 10-0 is quite some result. But Josie, again, another couple of weeks off. I know we have conversations like this a lot, but it seems like we're scrapping around looking for some positives. I was going to ask you then, do you think the break's going to do them good? But we've had different circumstances this season. We've had some big breaks and thought it might do them good to get some time with the manager and come back, and then the results soon afterwards are just disappointing. We've had some where we've had runs of games as well, picked up some wins in the League Cup or the Conti Cup as it was, getting to the semi-final of that, and that didn't seem to help in the league either. Sort of running out of options, are we, for positive things to grab onto?
Well, I think this is a positive because Ollie Harder came in. As I understand it, his first game in charge was the defeat at home to Tottenham on the 17th of January. And they've not really had a prolonged period between fixtures between then and now. I think that the longest they've had is a week or 10 days. So this one, where it's 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks between fixtures, is actually could actually be a positive in that, you know, it would allow him actually sort of 2 or 3 weeks to actually sit there and work out exactly, you know, what system works best with
what's going wrong,
what's going wrong, because he's got that time to do it, whereas before he's gone, right, okay, what's going wrong? 2 days time I've got another game, or in 3 days time I've got another game. So yeah, this is a good opportunity. This is the best opportunity he's had, really, to really dissect it and work out what's gone wrong and how to put it right. But then how do you prepare for, particularly given the form that we're in, how do you prepare for a home game against Chelsea, who are absolutely flying this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the problem is it's in one of those awkward periods, isn't it, where you see where a team are down on their luck, where sometimes you think you want to take the Allardyce approach and you think, just tighten it up at the back, sit back, because you're not scoring too many goals at the moment, so try and get your points that way. But it also appears that, as we saw against Brighton, that when we try and do that and we keep the opposition down, that we look even less potent in attack. That has been one of the problems this. Well, again, it's such a cliche, but it's like it's double whammy, isn't it? We've both not looked good going forward, nor at the back either. Yeah, I don't know. Fingers crossed. You've just got to hope, haven't you? Because there is, I think, the last few weeks, as we've seen, with the guests we've had on, Sandra Brobby from the Sun, Isabel, of course, coming on talking to us, Catherine Batt earlier in the season from the Daily Mail. All of them have tried to be a little bit sort of upbeat and positive, but the more recent conversations we've had among the three of us and with those guys as well, the mood is turning somewhat, isn't it? It went from, don't worry, Bristol City a two poor at the bottom of the league to, okay, yeah, Matt Beard's quite a good appointment. He seems to have had an immediate impact. Ollie Harder doesn't seem to have changed much at all. Okay, yeah, there's that every chance, and then, you know, as the clock ticks on, the games tick on. It's still best part of half a campaign left for the girls, just under that, of course, and anything can happen in that time. But when you're on a run of form like this, it does look worrying, Tom, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think there may be half the season left, but ultimately the girls are in a losing patch of form, and the longer this continues, the more they get dragged into it. And the last thing you want is heading into the final few months of the season, having to play for your lives down at the bottom with a squad who hasn't spent the time together that would be usual in a season. They don't have that camaraderie. They've lost their manager. They've lost experienced players. They've lost the core part of that dressing room, which gave them some success for the last few years. So it's going to get tough. They need to get results, and they need to start amending things as soon as possible. And I know it's a tough game coming out this week with Chelsea, but every game now is a game that they need to look to get points from.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It was Adriana Leon and Martha Thomas, the only girls out on international duty at the moment. Adriana Leon, obviously, with Canada games against the USA and Brazil in the She Believes Cup, and Argentina, actually. So yeah, worrying times. But I think we'll have a guest, Ella German, returning guest, of West Ham fan and sports journalist, WSL expert, who'll be returning to the show next week to have a look at that Chelsea game in a little bit more detail. But it is a bit of a worrying position for the girls at the moment. But just fingers crossed, as the boys have said, that Ollie Harder can get his head down and sort out some of the problems that are plaguing the team at the moment. Well, that is basically it for the show, but stay with us because we'll have some final thoughts from the boys and a brief Fantasy Premier League update next. So that is basically it for another week. What a feeling at the moment. Absolutely brilliant stuff. A great win over Tottenham to put the team fourth in the Premier League. I mean, the other teams, of course, their European exploits will start catching up with them. A lot of other teams around us having a lot more games on their hands, but we have just got one thing and one thing only to focus on, and that is that race for the Champions League spot. I do think, you know what, to be honest, while we're there, it's absolutely brilliant. We've got some tough games coming up, but if we finish in the Europa League spots after the season we had last year, that will be an absolutely heroic transformation from David Moyes. So we'll go into that. I'll get some final thoughts from the lads in a minute. But James, just briefly, The Fantasy Premier League, a quick update. We are just coming to the end of the game week with Leeds' win over Southampton. So there might be an odd bonus point or two to pick up. But let me know what I think. You are the current highest scorer for the week out of the three of us, aren't you?
Yeah, I've bagged 68 this week to continue my resurgence. I think that's my 5th week in a row with plus 60 points. You've pulled in 65, lucky with 13 off the bench.
Luckily.
And Tom's pulling in 60 at the moment, give or take one or two bonus points. But I've closed the gap on you, mate. I think at one point you were 130 points ahead of me, and now it's around about 60, 65.
Too little, too late, mate, I think.
No, you just wait and see, mate. You just wait and
Have you
see.
done a wild card?
Nope, and I've still got too many chips left, so just careful. I've overtaken Tom again this week as well, so Tom's back at the bottom of the pile, only by 6 points. But
what are the overalls you got?
So you're on 1518. I'm on 1449, and Tom is 1443. So it's getting tight between me and Tom. We're jostling, but we're catching you up, mate.
Continued ding dong down the bottom. As always, I mean, if you haven't joined the We Are West Ham Fantasy League already, then I don't suppose you ever will. But if you do want to and you're particularly late to it, it's lowercase CNY6, the letter OU. That's the code for our league. If you fancy it, follow us on Twitter and Instagram and all that sort of thing. Actually, we'll do the housekeeping in a minute. James, first of all, I get some final thoughts from the boys after what's been another brilliant week for West Ham, another brilliant podcast, and it's just happy days at the moment. So Jonesy, I'll throw to you first. Just give me some final thoughts on the last 7 days, especially that Tottenham game and especially tonight's podcast.
Yeah, it's been a really good show. It's funny what winning can do to a podcast, and it just seems really positive. I look back at that first couple of weeks, even those first couple of games after the initial lockdown, losing to Wolves and Spurs, and it was like doom and gloom, and here we are.
Wolves and Spurs, when was that?
Yeah,
after the first lockdown, it was last season.
Oh, sorry, mate. Right, I thought, yeah.
And we're doing podcasts straight after those games, and we're doom and gloom, and we're wondering how we're going to be in the Championship next year. And here we are, 6, 7, 8 months later, and we're just beating Tottenham to go into the top 4, and we're genuinely talking about European football of some sort next year. It's all a little bit surreal, but long may it continue. Some difficult fixtures coming up, as you mentioned, but we've navigated those difficult runs pretty well over the course of the season, and just trying to get me around it all still, but bring on City at the weekend, and hopefully we can come away with something. And by something I mean a defeat which isn't embarrassing, like 5 or 6. If it's 1 or 2, I don't mind.
Yeah, I must admit, I do kind of feel similar to you at the moment. If it took a 2-0 defeat, if I was offered that right now, I'd snap your arm off for it. But Tom, James is right there. Leeds at home, Man United away, Arsenal at home, Wolves away, Leicester at home are our next games. That takes us up to the 10th of April. So not an easy run, but all the teams that we're up against will be thinking exactly the same going into the games against us, wouldn't they? So, there's definitely reason to be positive. But it's been a good show again tonight. Great interview that me and you did on Monday with Tony Cottee as well. So brilliant to have him. Great to have Steve Tudor as well. So thanks to both of those guys. Don't forget, you can buy tickets for the virtual event with Tony Cottee and Frank McAvenny. Just head on over to @TonyCottee9 for details. Tom, just some final thoughts from you before we say goodbye for another week.
Yeah, firstly, like a bit of an honour to interview Tony Cottee. That's the first time I've actually been lucky enough to do it myself. I was in Portugal sunning myself one time, and another time I was at work. So yeah, a bit of a lip trembler at first, but what a legend, and that was a pleasure, and I hope everyone enjoys that. But looking forward to the team and everything. Why not? Like we say, we're playing one of the best teams in the world at the minute. I can't see us winning that. I'm saying draw out of hope and out of Chad's fillet of the season to go out and bet on West Ham wins and positivity. So following that blindly, but ultimately, the games we have coming up, it's effectively sort of in our hands to some degree. Like, games in hands are all being done now. We're the team in that spot. We're playing teams around us. We win 2 or 3 of those and we draw or lose a few, is absolutely ours to then lose. We come out the back of that with 2 or 3 wins, and it really is looking like a serious push for that continental spots, and particularly top 4. So who knows? We've got it in that first 11, and if we have a bit more luck, we can absolutely do it. So come on, West Ham, and fingers crossed.
Absolutely, mate. Wonderful stuff from both of the lads there. Thanks to our guests, like I mentioned, Tony Cottee and Steve Tudor. Thanks to both of the lads for a wonderful podcast, James Jones and Tom Edwards. Do follow us on Twitter at @WeAre_West Ham. Head on over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. The link to the channel is in the description to this podcast for that extended interview with Tony Cottee in full, as well as the show in full and some other bits and pieces that Jonesy is putting up on there. Do subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Give us a review, 5 stars, if you can. Say some nice words as well. But that is it for this week. 4 points off of Tottenham this season. We thought the Manuel Lanzini goal earlier in the campaign was going to top it, but a win on Sunday, 2-1 to go into the Champions League spots. Not many games to go now. It's a real possibility that West Ham will be playing football again in Europe next season and in front of fans after Boris Johnson virtually gave the country the green light to go back to normal after the end of June. Great time to be alive on that front. Great time to be a West Ham fan. Manchester City away at the weekend. It won't be easy, but surely if ever there's a time we're going to do it, then it is this weekend. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Keep the faith, up the hammers, and we'll see you next week.